attach the bottom piece to the upper portion of the bodice first. And I'm going to take my pieces, make sure you got them right side together. So as you see, I've attached the band portion. Next, I'm going to do a roll stitch on the neckline. You can check out my video on how to do that. And I'm also going to finish off my seam with that same roll stitch. I did my seam, and I went ahead and finished off my seam because I didn't want any serge stitches and I didn't want it raw because it would unravel. And I just did a roll stitch on my seam. And also for the neckline, I also did a roll stitch for the neckline as well. And I'll tell you a secret that I use on my neckline. When I press it, I spray some starch, just a little bit of starch around this edge, and then when you press it, it stays nice and flat. So now we're ready to connect the two pieces together, and we're just going to lay them down right sides together, and then we'll stop because we need to hem it. Sew the shoulder seams together first, and then we'll go back and hem the sleeve. Well, now I've connected the shoulders together. And also I did the roll stitch on the shoulders as well. Before we sew up our side seam, we want to hem the sleeve. Now here's our neckline and here's the shoulder seam. So here's the front and the back sleeve. So you're going to finish up the hem here. I'm going to roll stitch across the sleeves on both sides. Now that we have our sleeves hemmed, before we stitch up the sides, I'm going to go ahead and start with the ruching of the bottom of the top. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and roll stitch the hem. I've rolled edged the hem. So now we're going to start with the shirring, or this portion, this bottom portion of the top. And as you notice, like I mentioned earlier, they have several layers, and I'm going to use a thicker elastic. What I'm using is a 1/8 inch elastic, as you can see how wide it is. Okay, starting with either the front or the back, I've cut my elastic into the pieces, the length of pieces that I want. And as you see, my elastic is not that much smaller, or shorter rather, than my band itself, because I don't want a whole lot of stretch, because when it stretches too much, it kind of rides up. I decided I'm going to do 3 rows. I'm going to do them 1 inch apart, starting from the top down, because I want to leave a little peplum at the bottom. I'm making 3 marks that are 1 inch apart. 1, 2, 3, because this is going to tell me where I want the placement of the elastic to be, because I want them 1 inch, and the rest of this will be a peplum. So I'm going to mark the front and the back the same way. So I'm going to put my elastic down on the first line, and I'm sewing a gathering stitch because I want the loosest stitch that I have. And I'm going to stitch a little bit. I'm going to hold the thread so it doesn't jump beneath, and I'm going to start to sew. Now as I sew, because I remember my elastic stretch is good, I'm going to stretch and pull, and I'm going to stitch to the next mark. As I get to another mark, I'm going to stretch and pull. And you see I'm getting a little bit of a gathering now, because I don't want mine really full at the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing again, being real careful to make sure you're sewing right on top of the elastic. And I'm going to do this all the way to the end. So this is what 1 row of the elastic looks like. And I'm going to do this the same way on the other side, but I'm going to go ahead and start the second row so you can see how the second row gets started since you have the elastic here. Now to do the second row, you're going to do the same thing. I'm lining it up with my line, my 1 inch line. I'm going to pull my threads behind, start my stitching. And as I start the stitching, now when I pull, I'm going to be pulling both at the same time. I know it seems a little challenging to do, but trust me, it's worth it if you can handle it. So you're just going to sew, and you'll just complete this all the way across to the other side, pulling as you go. So this is what it looks like with the 2 rows done. See how you're getting a nice gathering, and see it stretches really good, and that's what I wanted, a nice good stretch. So now I'm going to go and add my 3rd row. There are my 3 rows, and you see how nice and gathered and cute it is at the bottom, and you have the little peplum at the end. So now we're going to do the other side and we'll come back and finish it up. Well, I'm on my final row on the last side, and I wanted to show you something that I do to kind of help with the gathers to keep them spaced. I have my elastic spaced an inch apart, so I'm going to put my last piece of elastic down on my marker, and as I'm sewing, I'm not concerned about the gathers here. I'm more concerned about keeping the fabric straight here. So when I sew, I pull my elastic, but then I'm not worried about the other fabric. As you see, it stays bunched, but I'm working off of the straight fabric that hasn't been done. And by doing that, I don't have to worry about trying to keep all of them straight at the same time. You worry about keeping this side straight, and it'll all kind of fall in place. So when I stretch, see, I'm just wrapping the fabric around, and it still gathers and it looks even. So now both sides are done. I've got the front as well as the back, and there's my elastic on both sides. So what I'm going to do now is sew the side seam. So right sides together, and I'm simply going to sew this up. And when I sew it up, I'm going to line up my ends, and my elastic pieces are all going to line up together just like that, and then I'll stitch it on top. As I sew this together, I'm matching up the tail end where I had the roll stitch, so you want to make sure those match up perfect. And the good thing about the elastic, if it doesn't match up exactly perfect, it's okay, nobody's going to really see it, but you want to match up the elastic as best you can and pin it together, because you're going to stitch through all thickness, and match up your seam that goes under the arm. And then you're going to sew this all together, and do not sew over your pins. Remove your pins so that you don't break a needle or cause an injury. Let me turn it on this side so you can see. And there you have that one side done. Because we've got the elastic and we've got double thickness, I'm going to end up serging the side of this, and I'm just going to use black thread because nobody's going to see it. So I'm going to stitch the other side up, and then I'll show you the finished product. I serged the side seams on both sides, so our top now is finished. And if you don't want to serge the sides, if you don't have a serger, you can also do a French seam if you'll just follow my video on how to do the French seam, and that will save you some time as far as trying to zigzag and make it all look neat. Well, anyway, here's the top. It's all finished. And I think it turned out really nice, so I'm going to put it on the mannequin and let's see how it comes out. This is the finished top. I think it turned out rather nice. I hope this tutorial has been helpful on how to copy a ready-made top. And I hope you try it. Happy sewing!